Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. I appreciate all of you who tune in on Facebook and those of you joining us here. Thank you so much. Today is all about Lughnasadh. So our main theme this year has been talking about the wheel of the year, the wheel of nature. This is just a natural way to follow the cycles and the rhythms of life. And so we started this year at Yule, which is the winter solstice, which was exactly opposite the summer solstice, because those are exactly opposite in the year. December 21st, and so, the summer solstice this year was on June 21st. So sometimes it's on the 20th, sometimes it's the 21st. It depends, there's a little bit of variance in there. But there are 4 holidays each year that are themed around the weather patterns and around the time of year. So that's the summer solstice, the winter solstice, the spring equinox, and the fall equinox. The spring and fall equinoxes is when daylight is exactly equal in the sky. That's why we sometimes have that variance. Sometimes it's on the 20th, sometimes it's on the 21st, on occasion it's on the 19th. So it depends on when that daylight is exactly equal with the nighttime. Yule is when the night is longest in the year. Summer solstice is when the daylight is longest in the year. So you might have a favorite depending on if you like the dark or if you like the light, if you like the heat or if you like the cold. It might determine which of these is your favorite. And then as we travel in between those, it's called the cross quarter points of the year, because you have the quarter points of the year here, and then the cross quarters go exactly opposite that. So we have Imbolc, which was the lambing season. That was early in the spring. So just as the ewes are producing milk, the lambs are being born, and the first early signs of spring happen, that's when we celebrate Imbolc. This is a Celtic Gaelic holiday. Then we had Beltane, which was following the spring equinox. Beltane is where we had the ribbons and you dance around the maypole and you celebrate, you have the full signs of spring are in full bloom. So that's May Day or Beltane, depending on what you want to call it. Also a Celtic Gaelic holiday. Then we come up to today, where we're going to be talking about Lughnasadh, which is also a little bit similar to Lammas, depending on where you are in the world. The English holiday, which was a more Christianized holiday, is Lammas. The traditional Gaelic Celtic holiday is Lughnasadh. So we have that represented with the sunflower here. The next of the Celtic holidays that we will be talking about is going to be Samhain, which is another Celtic Gaelic holiday. So we have, and before we talk about Samhain, we're going to have the fall equinox. So as you can see, our wheel is starting to get completed here. And since we are actually at Lughnasadh now, we're going to go ahead and, as the wheel turns, so our life continues. And we're going to try and not knock over the tree there. So it's nice to have a representation of the wheel, I think, because then as you see it, you can kind of see your life in that bloom, and you can see your life in that cycle. A lot of people, well, traditionally, most people would follow the wheel of the year and how they plan things and how their life was coordinated. And now as we get into modern society, we do tend to kind of fall away from that. And because we fall away from that, a lot of us get caught up in these busy, hectic cycles and these busy, hectic days, and we get out of tune with nature. And when we get out of tune with nature, we get a little out of sync, and the stress levels tend to rise. We might not feel like we have the breaks that we need, or we just feel that out of sync. So it's easy to get back in sync. And then when you get in sync, things just kind of fall into place, and it feels like life has that harmony again. You can see the big picture, just like you can see this wheel. So as we started in the winter and we were planning, and you kind of tuck into your houses, especially if you're in a colder climate, people tend to tuck into their houses, and it makes it easier to plan and do some inner thinking. What do you want to do with your life? Where do you want things to go in the next year? And not ironically, New Year's time's right in with that. And that's where everybody's talking about New Year's resolution, new goals for the next year. So that's here. And then we go into the spring and you're planting your seeds, just like in the Celtic days and, in old Ireland and in old Scotland. And even here in the United States, farmers, that's when they plant their seeds, and that's when you start the crops, and then they start coming up, and then you celebrate as you see those early signs of spring, and people start going outside because it's getting warmer, and it gets more activity and more excitement, because in the summer you can have more activity because it's lighter, the weather is warmer, people are out on the lakes, out on their boats, out talking to neighbors, sitting on the porches, all of that. And because of that, this is the time of year to really have all of the activity to just really celebrate the season and celebrate your life and do the work that it takes so that you can have a good harvest. Because no matter how much you plan and no matter how much you plant, you have to do the activity to make sure that you're going to have a good harvest, because it takes work to have our goals come up, and it takes work to have things created. And let me know if it seems like the camera goes off at all at some point too. JJ's not here today, so just getting a little extra help back there. It's my phone this time instead of his, and mine has a little extra data on it. So back to this, it takes work to make sure that you're getting where you want to go in life. And so now with Lughnasadh, this is my favorite, because we start getting the harvest season, and so we're starting to see those things coming back into us. And so interestingly enough, I had started working on genealogy a little bit this year, and just this week I've discovered new family members that I had no idea existed. And so how fun is that, that just as we're starting the harvest season, so planning, starting things, planting the seeds, taking action, and right in the same week as the harvest, I suddenly have 3 new family members that sound wonderful and exciting. So it's just another nice representation. I'm sure if you think about your life, there are things that you can see in your own life where there is stuff that's starting to be harvested, and some of those goals, maybe you work on a garden and then you have a very clear visual of that hard work you've been doing and how it's coming up. And so Lughnasadh is to celebrate this. Traditionally, this was celebrated in Ireland, Scotland, the Isle of Man. It's that Celtic holiday, as I mentioned, and it was to celebrate the sun god Lugh. Now, Lugh was the son of the sun, the S-O-N of the S-U-N, and so he came here basically to help with the harvest. I'm actually going to skip around in the way I wrote my notes here, but he was the son of the sun, and the sun god basically transferred his power into the grains. And so when he transferred his power into the grain, it causes the crops to grow. And then as the crops grow, then when it comes to the harvest and it's time to cut down the crops, then it's symbolic of sacrificing the sun god, and then sacrificing the sun god so that the people can eat, so that the people can live. And it sounds very familiar to other things that we hear in various religions, where you have the God who comes down and sacrifices himself so that the people may live. Well, that's really essentially what they were originally honoring with the sun god Lugh, by seeing that in the crops. And so it was more of a tangible, physical thing with having the crops that come in, and you nurture yourself with the crops. And so this whole festival was to honor the sun god and his son Lugh, so that they can ask for a bountiful harvest, and to ask that there be enough and there not be any blight, so that there's not famine in the winter, because now we have our grocery stores on every corner, but back then it was all dependent on how the harvest was in your area. So if there was a bad storm, you might have famine, and you might go